Joining us for our costume designers panel is Amy Andrews-Harrell for The Good Lord Bird on Showtime. I am Marcus James Dixon, the senior editor at Gold Derby. And Amy, I just want to start right off by talking about Onion. Onion is my favorite character. And for anyone that hasn't seen it, this was a young black boy in pre-Civil War America who he gets mistaken for being a girl by Ethan Hawke's character, John Brown. And so he decides from that moment to start dressing the part. What was it like? I guess what was the overall vision for Onion's character?
James McBride, who wrote the novel and won the 2013 National Book Award for it, describes his character so beautifully and in detail. And I was so lucky to have the novel as a reference because, as in television, often we didn't have secure scripts far enough in advance that I could get everything together. And in James's novel, he describes the prairie dress that John Brown had in his possession that he was going to give as a present to his daughter, and he takes it out of a saddlebag and gives it to Onion. So besides doing research for the period, which was loosely 58, 59 in bloody Kansas, so far as history goes. I did research of myself and kids dressing up because I wanted the dress to have the elements that it didn't fit him quite right, and he wasn't quite comfortable in it, but as John Brown, this man, gave it to him, and so he puts it on because he was told to put it on. So those were kind of the elements that I put into the dress.
I love the scene where Onion professes his love for John Brown's daughter, and he rips the shirt open and says, "I'm a man." What kind of work goes into a scene like that for a costume designer? You probably have to make sure all the buttons will be easily poppable, right?
It's so stressful. It is. I've done it so many times, and it's so stressful to figure out what you're going to do. Are you going to do this, or try to make the buttonholes a little bigger, or sew the buttons on barely, and nothing ever works, and it all works too well. And what we did was we just sewed it on, the buttons on, so some would pop off. We made the buttonholes a little bigger because I also didn't want him to have to run around the rest of the movie with his, shirt wide open. So just as an element of the script to have him be able to button his shirt back up so that maybe the shirt just popped open on its own if he went like that.
And how much did you know about this whole John Brown story before the project? I had heard of him, but I wasn't quite exactly sure, who he was. He was this white abolitionist who wanted to end slavery at all costs, even if it meant murder and mayhem.
I actually knew quite a bit. I've done this period quite a lot, and he is he started the Civil War. He started the thought to, this is what it's going to take to move this country forward. So I knew about it already, about him already. But Ethan took this character and ran with it in such a way that it became, so alive and so different and so new that it everything we were able to put a new twist onto everything.
And there are real photos of John Brown out there. Did you try to recreate those costumes kind of like button for button, or did you just use it as a starting off point, a jumping off point?
I think button for button, basically. I mean, it's there, and the photo that I used was in our story. John Brown goes to see Frederick Douglass, and this is off screen, or it was in at one point, but it went away, that Frederick Douglass gives him this suit so he can go speechifying. And so there are portraits of John Brown, and that suit that he wears up to Canada to raise money for his cause is very much taken from that historical photo of John Brown. His what we call this battle gear was an amalgamation of different even periods and different things that the script called for and that Ethan wanted. And so one of the technical things of his first costume, his big long greatcoat, was that in the opening scene he had to conceal an entire Winchester rifle underneath it. So that dictated it was a rather large coat. And I thought that John Brown would certainly like a coat of military styling because he was the leader of this army. And also there's a research note that I came across that described John Brown, the cross between a deacon and a soldier. And that's very much what I wanted the costume he wears most of the time to bring out.
I think I read somewhere that you were all about the dirt, like getting the costumes dirty so that you could slap it and kind of see the dust come off. Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's what I mean, when you read the book, you can just definitely smell, imagine what they smelled like. I wanted, if you patted them on the shoulder, the dust to come off of them. Certainly we weren't going to have any trouble with the sweat because we were filming in Virginia in the summer and it was humid and hot. But it takes a little bit of courage, and you have to have everyone come along with you, the producers and the directors and the actors, to go for it and age as far down as you have to age to have it come through and show up with this digital technology, because digital cleans everything up. Even when you look at a photograph from that period, even 1860s, and they've colorized it, everything will look less dirty. So we had to tear up the clothes and really make everything dirty to have it come through the lens. And I was happy with it. I think my aging team, my whole team, did such an amazing job. And we went for it, and my producers and Ethan let me go for it.
Well, speaking of Ethan, in case people watching this don't know, he also was the co-creator, the producer, the writer, so he was very influential in the project. What kind of conversations did he have with you about costumes, about his look for some of the characters?
We collaborated closely. He's wonderful to work with, and especially for the coat. He had an idea, well, for his character in general, he thought that John Brown would kind of move around like an elk. And so he wanted to restrain himself, because that's not really how Ethan moves. And even amazingly, if you hear Ethan speak on an interview and then you go watch John Brown, you're like, oh my God, how did he do that? It's a completely different voice. But especially with his movement, we were able to help him by sewing. He didn't want to flail his hands. So we sewed chain inside the cuffs, just to make him conscious of how, when he moved his arms, he was conscious of it. He wore a little posture apparatus that helped him with his posture, and it just he completely moved in a different way than Ethan Hawke in his regular life.
Yeah, he was great. The last question I wanted to ask was about the Harriet Tubman character. She only has really the one long scene. So how did you decide, if you only had one costume for Harriet, how did you decide on the one that you chose?
I think back to, the script, our Harriet Tubman was very specific, and she's modest in our script. She's modest, practical, and in the book she's described as dressed very simply. And she has on this shawl, which went through pretty many incarnations of us trying to figure out what it was, because the shawl, in the book, it has messages embroidered into it. And James, the author, I went to him and said, "What is this?" And he couldn't even, really give me a good solid answer. So I had to come up with a design, and that we embroidered onto the shawl. And I thought that, well, if she wears it in a certain direction, then people could look at her and see, oh, we're going to go at night, we're going to leave town at night, we're going to go by sea, or she changes the way it was, oh, we're going by land or by rail, or so it's in there, you can't see any of that. And then Harriet Tubman gives it to Onion, and he takes it, and it's his calling card. When he shows people this very unique shawl, they know, oh, Harriet Tubman has given him direct orders that he can speak for her. So, yeah, it was exciting, fun thing to do.
Well, thank you, Amy, for chatting with us. You won an Emmy for John Adams for playing in a similar period of time. So we will be rooting for you at the Emmys this year.
100 years earlier for John Adams, and that was Donna
Yes.
Zakoska designed it. But I got an Emmy nomination for this period with Killing Lincoln, so I know this period.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.